Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the first in the series of the A16 Improvement Science sessions, led by my good friend and colleague, Nick Holding. Just before we start, by way of introduction, I'd like just to give some background to Nick. Nick has over 18 years experience of leading improvement work across many parts of the NHS, specialising in lean, total quality leadership and organisational social psychology. Nick spent most of his NHS career in an acute hospital setting, leading organisational wide improvement programmes, and has trained and worked with the Seattle-based Virginia Mason Medical Center and Virginia Mason Institute for 3 years prior to joining joining ECIST. Nick has very kindly agreed to lead these sessions for us as part of the A16 program. Thank you very much, Nick, for doing this, and I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks again for asking me to host. So as Mark said, my name's Nick Holding, I'm an improvement manager with the Emergency Care Improvement Support Team. Usual introductions. Always promote myself with a bit of Twitter activity as well. So anybody's on Twitter, you can connect with me at Warsboy on Twitter, and you can see the ECIST Twitter handle there as well. So please feel free to connect with us. So these sessions really are about just sharing with you some thoughts, my thoughts, some things that I've gathered over the years, things that I've read, and just kind of wanted to share with you, what you may find helpful through this session and the other sessions that we're going to put on throughout the program. I think one of the things that for me is important to share is that I'm no expert at this. There are people in this room now listening in and listening to the recording who are far more experienced than I am at this, and almost certainly know more. Will definitely be better teachers and better public speakers than I am. But I suppose I'm just passionately curious about this, as Einstein says, and very interested in sharing some of the thoughts that I have. And some of you will agree with some of the things I say, and some of you will disagree with what I say, and that's absolutely fine. We put together this program hopefully to be helpful and to see if you can take away some of the aspects of it. I learned something a few years ago. I'm not a natural teacher. My improvement environment is more on a team-based or one-to-one based in a coaching methodology. But I found a few years ago that when I was asked to teach an improvement program, it really helps you get into the detail and you learn more by teaching. So that's why I'm here today. So this is a learning opportunity for me as well. So any feedback will be very much appreciated, good or bad, because that will take me forward on my learning journey. The chat room is open at the moment. I'm not going to do any Q&A session on this program, but if you put any questions or any comments or anything in the chat room now, my colleague Crystal is looking after that. I'll pick those questions up afterwards, and I'll get back to you over the next few days. So when we're talking about thinking like a farmer, I wanted to sort of share with you my thoughts on what I mean by that. It's quite ambiguous, but there's a bit of thought that goes behind it. So it's really about how we prepare for our improvement work, and how we prepare the environment and the climate and the ground to develop our improvement efforts before we even get started. Sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where we're working with really barren soil, we're working with unfertile land, teams, individuals, people aren't just ready for improvement, but we sometimes force that on them. But we sometimes miss out the preparation work before improvement starts in how we nourish and fertilise or create the right environment for improvement efforts to have the best opportunity of survival. Sometimes we see short-term changes or short-term improvements survive for a short while, but if the environment's not right, they soon wither and die, and they'll disappear. And what we're looking for here is sustainable change. And we know from all our experience here, all the people on this call now, we've all experienced change that wasn't an improvement. As Eli Goldratt says, any improvement is a change. So any improvement that we find has to be as a result of a change, but not every change is an improvement. And I think we can all relate to that, where we've seen change happen, but we haven't seen an improvement as a result of it. Multiple bed moves or ward configurations. We build new ED cubicles, expand the ED. We build more wards, we create more beds, but the improvement doesn't happen. We just create a change. And the thing what we find with that is people get tired. People get tired of change. There's fatigue, but people also build resilience to change as well. They'll find ways to resist change because they'll feel, well, this isn't going to result in any kind of improvement. So what I want to share with you today is just a few hints and tips to overcome that a little bit, and how we can start to learn to prepare the soil in advance of starting our improvement work. There's some grounding in this. That some years ago, McKinsey developed a survey, global survey, over 3,000 responders, that said that around 70% of change efforts fail. But for me, it's not that the 70% is the concern, because that's a kind of it's a 3/4, and we kind of expect the levels of failure in some of our improvement work. It's just that a further 25% only achieve some of their objectives. That only leaves us with 5% of change efforts that lead to a sustainable improvement or change. And that's quite startling, really, when you think about the amount of effort that we put into improvement and change, and all the effort that we place on making changes and the people who are associated with it. But we're only getting a 5% return on investment on all that effort. So think about some of the things that came out of that report and the findings from that report. And yes, that was global. It was multiple across multiple industries. It wasn't just healthcare. But anecdotally, I see this reflected in some of the areas that I've worked in across the country, and personally, I found this myself. So some of the key points I've picked out of that we'll cover in a bit more detail. It's about how we set those unrealistic expectations, both on ourselves, on the program, but also the other people that we're working with. Thinking about our buy-in, our how do we get that comms right? How do we get that buy-in from people? And then moving further down, I'm not going to go through all of them, but that time commitment and the improvement mechanism. So the time that we give to improvement, and the time that we set aside for the improvement program or the improvement enterprise is really important. And then the actual way that we do things, the improvement mechanisms, the methodology, the approach. Sometimes we find ourselves in a little bit of a situation where it's a little bit done to, and we find ourselves imposing change on other people. So when we think about all the effort that we put into this and all the work that goes into improvements, but we still only get in a very, very small return on investment. And forget these numbers. Just think about your own organisations and the amount of change and efforts that's been put into your own organisations over the years that you've been there, and previous organisations, and how many that actually have resulted in sustainable change. And we've seen regularly that often we'll see short-term change, short-term improvement, but nothing long-term. So you have to ask yourself, is it time to change and do something different? And as this quote says, when you discover you're riding a dead horse, the best strategy is probably to dismount and try something different. So I want to share with you a little story just to kick us off. It's one of my favourites that I used to share with my kids when they were very little. A little guy called Winnie the Pooh. You may know who he is. Written by A.M. Milne. It's chapter 1, page 1, first paragraph. Here's Edward Bear now coming down the stairs behind Christopher Robin. Bump, bump, bump on the back of his head. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming downstairs. He is sure there must be a better way. If only he could stop bumping for a moment to think about it. I think we all want to stop bumping our heads, don't we? We all want to just have that time and space to think about, can we do something slightly different? But the environment that we find ourselves in often is impatient. It's got to get on with it. We need to do things quickly, and we're not giving ourselves that time and space to think. The book by a guy called David Marquet, he talks about red work and blue work. Red work being the doing work and blue work being the thinking work. But we're not allocating enough time for ourselves for our improvement work for that blue work, where we stop and think and bring people together. So it's not that the system and the environment that we work in is broken. We've created this way. We've created a situation where we're impatient for change. We don't give it the time that it needs, and that leads to short-term fixes and unsustainable change moving forward. So as Einstein says, we can't solve the problems with the same thinking that we used when we created them. So we have to do something different. We can't just carry on as we are, just hoping for change, and just hoping that if we try harder and we work harder and we push harder, that something magical will happen. It will just suddenly improve. We have to do something fundamentally different in the way that we approach our improvement work. So my advice as we move forward in the Align 16 program is think about your approach, your improvement mechanism as you take your efforts forward. What we find is we're looking for simple answers to complex problems. Those simple answers often are wrong, and it takes us on a short-term journey on those short-term fixes. Sometimes we have to spend a bit more time understanding the more complex answers that will help us understand the sustainable improvement that we're looking for. When we follow that well-trodden path, we see repeated over and over again, year on year, it just gets us back to the same place again, and we go again every year. We relaunch, we redo something else, and we're starting again. What we're talking about here is actually doing something different, taking a slightly different path, taking a less trodden path that maybe won't be as certain as the old path, but it may lead us to a brighter future. Because as these quotes talk about, quite famous quotes, definition of insanity: doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Always done what you've always done, you always get what you've always got. And then, of course, the one from Don Berwick and apparently others, if you search on the internet, every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. So we have to look at how do we change the world that we live in and our improvement approaches. So the first top tip, which will be completely unpalatable to most people, and the more senior you get, this top tip is less palatable. It's take your time. The Line 16 program has been designed with a period of discovery at the start of it. We talked about this on our launch event, that the first month or so is a period of discovery, helping us to get to know you guys, helping us to understand where we can be helpful. And I'd ask you to do the same for your teams as well as you start your improvement journey. Some of you may have started already, and that's fine. I'd ask you to sort of reflect on, are you on the right path? Have you got the right environment? Is the environment correct? Has it been prepared enough before you start? And it's really important to take your time at the start, before you start your improvement journey. Because sometimes we find ourselves in a situation we say we're just too busy to improve, but we can't be too busy to improve, because we end up redoing and coming back and doing the same thing over and over again. So spending the time now is really, really important. You will get the return on investment. You'll get the reward back in bucket loads. This time spent now, the investment you make now in preparing for your improvement over the next month or so you'll get back at the end through a sustainable change. And just a quick example in real terms, not healthcare, but the story of the hybrid engine that Toyota developed a few years ago. They set themselves an ambitious target of getting that to market at I think it was a Munich Motor Show within 2 years. That got changed very quickly to 1 year. They had to develop and launch within 1 year. They spent 9 months preparing and developing the program to ensure that they avoid rework and repetition and mistakes when they went into the experimentation and development phase. So that investment in time, that will pay back in absolute bucket loads. What we find is that, this quote from Stephen Covey: if the ladder is not leaning against the right wall, every step we take gets us to the wrong place fast. So the way we understand if we're up against the right wall is truly understanding what our improvement environment looks like. What does the data tell us? What are our people telling us? But fundamentally, do we understand our current state? Do we understand actually what's going on? Not just based on data, or based on reports or dashboards that you might have developed, or even external dashboards that you look at, but actually what's happening in your organisation. What's the systems and processes? What are your people telling you? What's the feedback from them? Because data only tells one story. It starts the conversation. But I'd ask you, as a top tip, I always use these kind of principles developed by Fujo Cho at Toyota. Go see, ask why, be curious, find out from people, show respect to the people who do the work every day, that you want to go and find out from them what are the issues and what are the struggles that they're facing every day. As I said, data is of course important, as Toyota says, but we place greater emphasis on facts, and facts are those things that when your people and your teams tell you that this may be the performance in the data, but these are the issues that are getting in the way of that. And as you start to look at your preparation work, you'll get a true understanding of the current state of what it's like to work in your organisation and with your teams at the moment. What you find is that it's the systems and the processes that are at error. It's very rarely the people. My experience, big believer in this, people don't come to work to do a bad job every day. It's the systems and processes they work in. Some really good people are working in poor processes, and the processes will win every time. So focus on the systems and the processes. Data tends to lead us down to a direction of judgment and opinion and blame it's them, it's their fault, it's that department, it's those people over there. When you get down into the team and understand what the systems and processes are, understand your current state, that's why it's worth spending the time now before you launch into your improvement work, because then you'll know exactly where you need to go and your ladder will be up against the right wall. And if you focus on data, it's a quote from General Eisenhower, you don't lead people by hitting them over the head. That's assault, not leadership. So improvement leaders, using true information, understand the current state, understand what's happening in the teams, get some feedback, and then you'll get a better understanding of what's happening in your organisation. So that is a bit of a look back, a bit of a summary of where I feel we're at the moment. But I want to offer an alternative view moving forward. I want to offer you a suggestion of where we can take this forward and maybe how you can think a little bit differently. The first thing I'm going to say is that there's a quote from George Box is absolutely spot on. Essentially, all models are wrong, but some are useful. So you can take bits and pieces from models. So, as an improvement leader, you come across so many models, and there's models coming up everywhere. But for me, I'll just say, take elements of it, and the things I'm going to share with you now, see how you can apply those to your organisation. So the first model I want to share with you, really one I've used for many years now, I think it's really fundamental to really good improvement work, is the theoretical model of behaviour change. Complicated title, more commonly known as the stages of change model. And simply put, this tells you that there are these 5 stages of change that we all go through, whether it's personal or whether it's professional, in our work environment, our personal lives. Predominantly, this model we used in public health, but it is being used more and more in other areas as well. But it tells us that we all start at stage 1, but we all move through those stages incrementally. But you can't miss stages. You have to go through them step by step. You can't jump from 1 to and miss one out. You have to move through them individually. So if you're at the stage now where you don't realise that you don't see a need for change, and you're at stage 1, we think about how we can move into contemplation stage and then preparation. But too often we find ourselves where we've gone through that process, we've understood the data, or we've gone to find out what's happening. And then we ask other people to launch into action. Everybody has to move through these stages incrementally. So think about how you might do that for people. And some will move through them very quickly. Others might take a little bit more time. And those people who move through them quite quickly, they're usually those early adopters, those innovators. They'll be at the start of everything. They'll be waiting outside the shop when the new iPhone's released to buy the first one. They want to drive down that new motorway when it opens, or buy the new car when it comes out. They'll just be there. They'll be ready to jump on board. And they'll move through that model really quickly, because they'll just want to move. They'll just want to do something different. As you move through the curve, most people sit towards the early majority and the late majority. Now the people who need a bit more persuading, need a bit more information to help them come on board and to understand the need for change. And right at the end, a horrible term, don't like the term laggards, but I tend to call them skeptics, to be honest. So these are people who need a bit more persuading, and your skeptics are the one who are going to keep you on track. So often we'll go with our innovators and our early adopters and get them on board. But our skeptics will help us keep us on check, will help us understand, are we on the right track? We'll just question a little bit. They aren't being difficult, they aren't digging their heels in, they're just questioning a little bit. So use your skeptics to test out or to keep a check with your innovators and early adopters, if we are on the right track. But those people, those skeptics may take a little more time to work through the model, but they're the ones you may need to describe the change to in a bit more detail. They're not wrong. We just probably haven't described it well enough to them. The others will just be there with you. So think about how you frame the problem, how you frame the change that you're about to embark on, so everybody involved can understand it, and they will move through this model really quickly. But just don't expect people to jump from number 1 straight to number 4, because you won't get the number 5. To remember what we're focused on here, we're looking for sustainable change. We're looking for a collaborative approach to the work. We want people to be involved. We want engagement. We want ownership It can't be down to individuals. It can't just be down to you guys who've joined this call to make the change. If it's just down to you guys, it's going to be exhausting and it won't sustain, because it can't just be down to one person. So our goal is to engage people and sustain change. The change itself is not the goal. And if that's all we focus on, is just making that change, and we drive hard and we develop we've got to work harder, we've got to move faster, we've got to get there quicker, we'll develop an escalation of commitment, and we'll just focus on that rather than how we can engage people and understand the environment and the climate that the improvement work is going to be established in. So the goal is the goal, not the change itself. So when we find ourselves in a situation where we're focused on the change solely, and we're in a bit of a battle because it's our opinion against somebody else's opinion, we find ourselves in arguments. And if we treat everything like an argument, then there's going to be winners and losers. And nobody wants to be a loser. Nobody wants to lose an argument. So you start to get resistance, people will dig their heels in, and will start to work against what you're trying to do, because there's a feeling of, I don't want to lose this argument. To create an environment where we all see there's an opportunity for improvement, and we don't turn this into an argument, and we look for collaboration, because we tend to be all focused on the same thing. We just may see things in a slightly different perspective. We're all focused on doing the right thing. Well, when we see others as others, we see others as opposite to us, we start to build a bit of a fight mentality, a bit of a battle mentality, and we try to overcome those other people. But tend to be, when we start to learn and start to understand the perspective from another side, we start to see that actually we're all pretty much the same. We're all heading in the same direction. We may just have a different kind of approach. So I'd encourage you to think about the people that you bring around you. Who are the team? Who's your guiding coalition of people that you bring around you? You're looking for diversity of thought here, because people have different perspectives, different opinions. They may not be the same as yours, but they may just see things slightly different to you. So as you bring together your collaboration of people who are working on your projects, look at the diversity. Think about, are you working within an echo chamber? Are you got people who are just reinforcing your beliefs already? And look at how you can pull together on other people who can offer different suggestions and different thoughts, who may challenge the status quo and challenge the way that our existing thinking. Because we just do see things differently. And those people from different professional backgrounds, different personal backgrounds, they will just offer a different perspective. So I'd encourage you to think about who are the people that you've got working alongside you and with you, and you've engaged in this work, and encourage and ask for challenge and different perspectives. A really great book on that, and I will, over this series, I'll share with you a number of books that I've found helpful in this. Really great book is, many of you will probably know it already, but Matthew Syed's Rebel Ideas. And I've just drawn out a couple of quotes from the book. When people from a singular background are placed into a decision-making group, they are liable to become collectively blind. So this is thinking about things we just miss because we are so used to the world, the environment and the world that we live in and the subject matter, that we just start to miss the obvious. Something called defect blindness creeps in, where we just start to miss the errors, the defects, the issues, or the things that are just so obvious to an outsider. So that collective blindness comes in when you've got a team of like-minded professionals, a group of similar people. Some of the best improvement work I've seen is where external fresh eyes, people from one of the best ones I think about where somebody from an IT department came in and joined the improvement work just to offer a different perspective, just to offer a different point of view. Second quote, to become a visionary, you have to take the perspective of an outsider, to see the things that are taken for granted by an insider. And that's being open to challenge. That's saying that we want people to question our preconceived ideas, our biases, perhaps, our assumptions and our myths. And you do that when you talk about go and seeing people, go and understand your current state. You get feedback and you understand perspectives from a different point of view. Because sometimes as change leaders, as improvement leaders, we get stuck in an environment where we are projecting our thoughts for the right reasons, absolutely the right reasons, but we're projecting our thoughts and our improvement ideas onto other people. And as Bryce Williams talks about in Working Out Loud, Being an effective change agent involves demonstrating what you teach as much as pontificating from the mountaintops. So if you're on using this analogy, stretching the analogy even further, if you're on a mountaintop, you need to get down into the valleys and work with individuals and people to understand their life from their perspective, but also to get some feedback, their ideas, their suggestions. Because when you're on the mountaintop, you can't see the detail, you can't see the granularity. And the mountaintop analogy is kind of where you're at if we're just using data from reports, or we sit in meeting rooms or boardrooms and making decisions around improvement that way. You have to get down and understand what's happening with our teams. So I'm asking you really to take this forward, how we can think different, how we can do things differently. And as you move forward, think about your experiences, think about what's gone on in the past. Some things will have worked well, and draw on that. Think about the things that haven't worked well and see how we can avoid making those same mistakes again. But I think different involves that time that you need to spend. And that is the hardest challenge I've seen for leaders across the NHS, is committing the time. We're always in a bit of a rush, we're impatient for change, we want things done very quickly. And it's not a criticism, it's something that we get caught up in this hamster wheel, and we're fixated on that red word. The clock's ticking, we've got to fix it. But if we want sustainable change, if we want to do something different, we have to think different. Just because it's new or different doesn't mean it's wrong. Some of the best ideas, you will have all been involved in the last 12 months. The amount of new work, the amount of new ways of working that have been developed that haven't been done before over the last 12 months. Some of it have stuck, some of it has worked, some of it hasn't. But we create an environment where we try new stuff out. And I wouldn't want us to fall back into that world where we're just doing the same old and expecting different results. So I suppose this is your opportunity as we come towards the end of this session. This is your opportunity. For those who maybe want to do something different, who wanted to try something different and actually spend some time thinking about the improvement work before you actually launch into it, then now's the time. The Align 16 programme is designed to support that. The improvement managers who are working with you, that's our ethos as well. We're here to support you. We're not going to push you to go faster and quicker. We're going to encourage you to be mindful and think about, in a more considered approach, how you truly need to understand which is your direction. So if you do that, then you'll get the results. You'll get your rewards. You'll get your sustainable change. You'll understand. You'll get buy-in. It won't be just down to you, and you'll get using the analogy here, you'll get a flourishing crop of improvement results. So prepare the soil, understand what you have to do before you launch into your improvement work, what you need to do. Some of it may be light touch, some teams may be ready to go already, others maybe just be very resistant or not ready for improvement. But rather than ignore that or just impose improvement work on them, what you need to do with those teams to help them to develop a climate and environment where they're ready for the improvement work to take place in their area. So just wrapping up now, as I said at the start, these are my thoughts. Welcome your feedback, really would. If you disagree with me, absolutely fine. If you agree, all good as well. Let's start a conversation. This is based on, as Mark said, some of my experience. I read lots of books. I'm a bit of a book geek. I listen to lots of podcasts, so it's kind of absorbed lots of stuff, and that's what I wanted to sort of share with you. But it is based on a little bit of theory, quite successful theory, in fact, that's been turned into practice, and that's Kotter's 8 steps. So where we're at the moment is the first 3 boxes. We're in this stage now where we're creating the climate for change. You're developing a sense of urgency, you're building your team, and you're getting the vision right before you move into the communication phase and then onwards. By the time we get to the end of the Align 16 programme, around about October, you should be in the don't let up and make it stick phase. Kotter's model for me is probably one of the easiest and more reliable models that we can work with about how we develop, establish, and then see through and sustain change. So you're going to start your journey. As I keep on saying to people, if you have a vision in the future, that's fine, but think about the first stage, and the first step for me is understanding where you are now with your current step. As the quote says, journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and sometimes those single steps is just stopping for a minute and breathing and just thinking about how we can do things slightly different. So as I said at the start, the content of these sessions, I've got a little bit of content that I can put together. Very happy to put that together myself. Any suggestions, more than happy. These are we've always said the Line 16 program is co-designed by you guys. So tell me if there's things that you want me to cover, and I'll include those in one of the next sessions over the next few months. All left for me to say is good luck with your work. The ECIST team are here to support you. Mark and Andy have set up a brilliant program, and the rest of the improvement managers will be here to support you in your work as well. Feedback to me through email, really great. Let me know any suggestions. Let me know what you thought. Any conversations on moving forward, that's absolutely fine. Connect with me on Twitter at Wolvesboy ECIST Network. Twitter account is there as well, so please connect with us as you see fit. Other than that, we're just on time now, 1 o'clock. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you all at the next session in a month's time.